Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Do you ever have those days where you're really tired, grumpy, irritable? I believe they call it Tottenhamitis. I feel I have a serious case of Tottenhamitis today. Um, I'm very fortunate in my job. I love my job. I love the fact that I get to kind of do what I do and the behind the scenes kind of elements it has in the job. Some days, though, I really wish I could just hide away, just hide away under a duvet or something, or just run away to the other side of the world and forget that Tottenham Hotspur exist. This feels like one of those moments. It really does. Oh my goodness, that was just embarrassing. It was embarrassing. It just feels like embarrassing is the word that currently sums up Tottenham Hotspur for me. Whichever way you want to look at it, at various points. It's embarrassing that they sit 15th in the table. Absolutely is. It's embarrassing that once again they played the role of Dr. Tottenham and that a team struggling in the league came to Spurs. I'm like, if you wouldn't be so kind, or if you would be so kind. And Spurs very generously obliged. We've seen it so many times now. Isn't it Palace, Ipswich, and now Leicester as well. I mean, Leicester were on a 7-game losing streak, and Spurs somehow allowed them, or just gave them 5 minutes of ridiculous defending to go, there you go, hope you feel better, thanks, be on your way. Just so annoying. 2 key moments, really, within 5 minutes. So all they had to concentrate longer for was those 5 minutes. Leicester, second from bottom. I have to remind you, second from bottom. So embarrassing. It is embarrassing. It's embarrassing that Ange Postecoglou's Tottenham Hotspur are third highest goal scorers in the league, yet they've won one of the past 11 matches. They've failed to win any of the previous 7. Sorry, it's in the Premier League, both of those. And they are currently closer to the relegation zone than they are to the top 10. It's just mad. Absolutely mad. It's embarrassing that Postecoglou had to use 2 players on Sunday that shouldn't have even played. But so limited are his options right now that he had to. He's just got no one else really apart from one player. We're going to talk about that. He didn't even have enough players to fill his bench because of the late switch for Pat Matasar, who was one of those players, had to come in. Maddison couldn't play. That bench only had 8 players on it because of that late change. So many things are embarrassing. It is embarrassing that Postecoglou is constantly having to defend the mismanagement of a transfer window. It's been a disaster, this transfer window, in Premier League terms, regardless of what happens in its final week, because the damage has been done by this transfer window. The inactivity in the first, it's almost 4 weeks. Some of you might watch this on Tuesday. That will be 4 weeks of the transfer window without a single outfield player joining at a time when the club has desperately needed it. Postecoglou has called for new additions, reinforcements, cavalry, whatever you want to call it, constantly. The players have been, in terms of their jaded, tired performances, the injuries they're picking up have been kind of indirectly calling for it as well. Even Maddison directly the other day spoke about how small their squad is. Yet has that help come? Has that aid come to them? Not a single drop of it. And it's just indefensible. It is. Other clubs have managed to do it. If this was a window where no one was signing anyone and everyone was complaining about how difficult it is, maybe you could say, okay, fair enough. But other clubs have moved and they have moved to sort out issues in their squad. Where was the planning? I still keep going back to that. Where's the planning for different scenarios in this window? It kind of feels like either a plan was, let's wait until the end and see what bargains we can get, which I'm hoping it's not, because we've all been critical of that sort of kind of thinking or assuming that's the feeling, the planning before, or whether it is just literally they have failed at every point to try and bring someone in that they wanted, which is also a bad way of kind of having a window and going about a window. And yeah, just absolutely ridiculous. It just is embarrassing. And it's embarrassing that the manager is the only person at Tottenham Hotspur that speaks when things are going hard. Things are tough, things are hard. I know, players do, and Sonny fronts up every single week and has to do his apology and how disappointed he is. But when it comes to staff, it is just Postecoglou, or it is in the past just the manager that fronts up. When Daniel Levy speaks, it's normally when he's sacking a manager, the financial results, and that end of season kind of thing we get where he discusses another season without silverware. Or the sporting director. How many sporting directors the Spurs had that I've kind of got the feeling they were going to come in and they were going to be talkative types. We were going to hear from them. Fabio Paratici, interviews in Germany, Italy all the time. Sky Italia used to interview him all the time before matches. Great, he'll come to Spurs and he'll be the link to the media. We'll hear what the boardroom is thinking. No. I'm trying to think of anything. He did the transfer window wraps, which we get every window. And I think, if I remember correctly, he did a press conference when Conte couldn't speak yet because he wasn't technically, I don't think he had his visa to begin work. It's the only times I can remember. And Johan Lange, again, just the transfer window wrap. That's all we're getting. I don't know whether he was more vocal at Villa. I don't really know, to be honest. But it just feels unfair, isn't it? That the manager has to kind of defend things that are just, they're not in their wheelhouse. They're not in their kind of sphere of influence. A manager can talk to a player if they're kind of the club are at a stage where they could get them, but ultimately they've got to get to that stage first. Absolutely. It's just quiet, isn't it? You just kind of want this leadership, this kind of voice. There was meant to be an interview, wasn't there, with Simon Jordan and Daniel Levy. I don't know what's happened to that. Whether that's going to see the light of day or what. But yeah, it is frustrating. And look, I'm also wary that a lot of other clubs, chairman and top people, don't really talk too much as well. But you kind of feel like, I don't know, when it is a tough moment, that's when these kind of figures should be heard from. And not just because they've sacked a manager and they've got to explain it. Just to kind of explain a plan, explain what's going to happen, explain what hasn't happened and why. It just would be so refreshing. I think that's more than anything would be so refreshing. So that's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that, it was embarrassing, no doubt, for Daniel Levy to hear the loudest chants yet kind of against him in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which we know is his crowning glory. That is his biggest achievement for Spurs, is creating that amazing stadium. So to hear that, thousands singing for him to be removed from his position or to leave the club, that must be embarrassing. It happened throughout the game. It was about to happen. It started at the final whistle. Before that music went, they turned up the volume. I'm not saying it's deliberate, but it certainly seemed coincidental that the noise just shot up with the music. It wasn't as loud as the lap of honour, lap of shame, whatever you want to call it, lap of dishonour that we had a couple of seasons ago after the Brentford defeat, when poor Lucas Moura was trying to say goodbye and everyone was going, I can't hear anything. Because it was so painfully loud because they were trying to block out boos and chants or whatever. But look, it couldn't stop the chants during the match. There were all the ones were wheeled out, the Kulusevski chant, just the plain kind of, wanting Levy out of the club chant. And it's embarrassing, I think, as well, that, especially going back to the transfer window, that it feels like a transfer window where they learnt nothing, the club, from those two critical transferless windows under Pochettino in his final full season. The amount of times we go back to those windows because it felt like such a crunch time. Those two windows without reinforcement, it felt like that sucked the life out of not only the club but Pochettino as well. Pochettino never seemed the same after those windows. I know the Champions League final defeat would have played a big part in that as well, but it was almost like such a moment to push on and such a moment missed. And you kind of think, okay, we're going to learn from that. And this feels like one of those windows where just inactivity has creeped in again. And it was such a crucial time to not do that, to do anything but be inactive. Even if it was just to bring in, even Postecoglou, I think, has said this in the last couple of weeks, that it's not even to bring in superstars, great quality first team players kind of thing. Starting 11 players. It's almost just to have some squad depth, to have some players to turn to have some players that can fill in games. It's just rotational players. Even just loan players for the short term, for a couple of months. Anything to keep the current players from getting totally overused and injured. Just mad. It's like not a single lesson has been learned. And look, I'm sure they're going to, maybe I hope, but you would think that they're going to try to get something done, at least one, if not two, 3, who knows? Get 10 in. Just do something. Just kind of look like you care. And I know Postecoglou has constantly told us they're working hard, and I'm sure they are. Just work a little bit harder to get it done. Tottenham just feels like the club that gets a certificate for working hard. They don't get trophies, they don't get silverware, but they get a certificate on the wall. Well done, you worked hard. You get a merit badge. It's not good enough. It's just not good enough. And, managers lose their jobs at Spurs, regardless of how hard they've worked, if they haven't achieved. And it's like, should that not apply throughout the club? I don't know. I don't run a club. I have nowhere near the money required. Not even a fraction of a fraction of a fraction, if that's even a thing. It's just, it feels like that period when they didn't build on the Pochettino era, they've been kind of flailing around ever since, trying to get back to where they were without maybe realising that was one of the key mistakes they made. And I mean, obviously in a week as well, when we've had the reports that have come out, I think I mentioned in the last video about the wage percentage in relation to revenue, and I think maybe Spurs, if you want to say top that or at the bottom of it, I don't know which way you want to look at it. It depends. If you're a business person, you're going to go, "Whoa, that's great! You've topped that chart." But if you're a football fan, you're probably thinking that's not so good. I think it was it 42%, I think, or something of revenue, which ultimately must have gone down this season with getting so many high-earning players off the wage bill and replacing them with teenagers. It must have gone down. And it's not a thing that screams ambition out there to the fan base. Of course it's not. It's there to be seen if every other club is spending a higher proportion of their revenue, and the whole point is, the stadium is going to be a game changer, it's going to bring all this money, which it is, and yet they're not utilising it to its full effect. It is that wage structure, isn't it? It has crept up over the years, and there's a lot of talk always about performance-related bonuses, things like that being big, but ultimately they're not going to pay the wages in the modern game that can compete with others. You can compete with a lot of foreign clubs, but ultimately their rivals are the Premier League clubs right now, or the likes of the big boys in Italy like Juventus and the Milan clubs, and it's Bayern, I guess, in Germany as well. Certainly know that they've taken players that Spurs would like to keep, I guess. And I guess it'd be embarrassing for the club and the owners to see the banners that we saw yesterday. There was one right at the front of the South Stand that said 24 years, 16 managers, 1 trophy, time for change. There was another smaller banner, I think it was smaller, couldn't tell, just distance-wise, it was at the back of the South Stand, which said, "Our game is about glory, Levy's game is about greed." It's embarrassing, the footage that appeared to suggest that stewards were trying to take down that first banner that I spoke about at the end of the game. That's not a good look. I don't know what the rules are. I don't know how it works. Would banners have to be pre-approved? I don't know. It's certainly not saying something offensive. It is saying a feeling, an emotion, a fan sentiment, I guess. So that would be very disappointing, I think. And it, like I say, it doesn't come across well. If someone's kind of right to have their say was being taken away, that's not good. It could have been just maybe over zealous stewards, thinking that they were doing the right thing. I genuinely don't know. So kind of leave on that. It just wasn't a good look, is what I'll go for. And maybe most embarrassing of all is that when those chants come, and they're louder, as I said, than we've ever heard before in that stadium, all journalists honestly looking at each other, it started like there was one point, I think recent games we've heard it in the South Stand, maybe hasn't trickled around the rest of the stadium too much, whereas this time it did. It was getting around, and other pockets of the stands were, there were thousands kind of singing these chants. And what is, like I say, the most embarrassing thing is often in the past when we've heard that, there's only one direction things go. The manager ends up paying the price and the whole cycle starts again. We do the 18-month cycle again. I do think there's certainly, that's obvious now. I think you've probably noticed all of us in the stuff we've written, the journalists have mentioned that that's what happens. So all eyes are kind of on that. It's not some kind of gimmick or trick now to kind of just throw someone under the bus. It's like the wider picture is seen. It's becoming kind of more and more obvious, I guess, that, it can't just be about managers. It must be about decisions made throughout the club. If you're having to change your manager 18 months, there must be more to it than that. From what I understand at the moment, and obviously the way the world of Tottenham Hotspur works, you have to say the moment. But for now, it seems like Spurs are sticking with Postecoglou. Like I said before, still the same. There's an understanding this injury crisis is just ridiculous. They kind of lost another load of players, even another one on the day in Maddison. And they are going to try to sign at least one player. At least. I've really got to stress the at least. In my talking points this morning, I said, I think in my tweet, about at least one player, and everyone went, one player! It just was like this massive outcry. They kind of only took the one, but at least, maybe I should have said at a minimum one player. I don't know whether that would have the effect or not. I think everyone just saw the word one. And look, I absolutely think they need more than one player. They've got a week left to do it. It's Monday today. It's next Monday, isn't it? Is it Monday the 3rd? Yes, I think it is. I think, of course it has to be. It's after the weekend. And you can't close the transfer window at a weekend because of various things with not being operating and not being open, all these sort of things. But a week left. I hope it's not just one. They need a couple, to be honest. We'll talk about that a little bit towards the end, I think, kind of what he needs, but I think there's pretty glaring and obvious kind of what that squad needs right now. I should stress, Postecoglou is not blameless in all of this. Absolutely not. He is well aware the results under his leadership have been nowhere near good enough. And also, when he's had a full squad available, at the start of this campaign in particular, I said they would start the season slowly. Unfortunately, they started the season slowly, and that little patch, didn't they, where they won 9 or so out of 11 games. But then the injuries, bang, bang. But still, that first patch, that's effectively come back to bite him on the backside right now. Because had they started in a quicker way, had they put some of those performances that were good performances, matched them with good results, you'd be talking about them kind of being mid-table now. And maybe people would be a bit like, oh, okay, you're doing well in the Cups, you're mid-table, yeah, we get it. But the fact that they are right down there in 15th, that's all you see. And it's understandably so. There's no getting around it. And I mean, the defending has not been good enough as well. And that's something I know there's tired players, tired minds, whatever you want to say. But ultimately, he is responsible for that as well. He hasn't shied away from that. But the only thing that you have to underline it with is he is working in the most absurd of workplaces right now. He's trying to operate within that. Like I said, lost Maddison ahead of kickoff. Brilliant in midweek at Hoffenheim. Praising his performance in the last video. Just what you'd need against his old team. Would have been fired up. Need the creativity. Need the goals. And he's not available. Turned up to the stadium. He was there in his tracksuit. And just in Postecoglou's words, was feeling sore. Essentially, I've seen him getting a bit of stick for that on social media, as in Maddison for that. I kind of feel like that's and I'm not saying this definitely is. This is just like an assumption, an opinion, whatever, nothing to be aggregated or anything like that. But I just wonder whether, like saying sore right now is a muscular thing. Is there something with a muscle that they just don't want to take a risk with and make it worse and things like that? So yeah, the fact that he couldn't play, and then they played the clearly not ready Pat Matasar. You could see it. He was not moving freely at times. And this again is another area where, for me, Postecoglou has to take the hit, really. And I think there's a fault that can be placed on him here, not in the injury so much, because I've said this a million times. People kind of going on right now about intensity or things like this. They're barely training at any intensity. They're not. They're recovering all the time. That's all it is. But what he kind of, we're talking about the lack of transfers in this month being, seen as negligent. You could also argue that by the same token, you also have to criticise Postecoglou that he had a fresh player in Sergio Reguilon. Look, should Sergio Reguilon still be at the club? No. No, he should not. That he's still at the club remains baffling on all counts. It's 2.5 years they have not wanted him at the club and he is still there. He doesn't fit the system whatsoever. However, he is a left-back that can do the job of a left-back. He is fresh. He has barely played any minutes. He has not started a single game this season. You have a fresh pair of legs. So the option was there to play him at left-back and to move Archie Gray into the centre midfield, which they did later in the game. So we can discuss the whys and wherefores of who should have played and who shouldn't have played, whether Sergio Reguilon is good enough. And personally, I don't really think he is, but you've got him there. And you've got him there, and he can do kind of what you're asking of him against the second from bottom team in the Premier League. He played well for Brentford last season. He had some really good performances for them, so he can do that job. But instead, Postecoglou has ignored that, or not ignored it, but just decided he's not for me, I'm not going to start him, and he's turned to an injured player, a player that shouldn't be playing the game. And if Sarr has made his injury worse, I'm not saying he has, but if he has, then that's really bad. But that is bad management, unfortunately, in that scenario, because you've got a fresh player. It's one to kind of discuss with him further at the next press conference. What's that, Wednesday? It's a difficult one because Reguilon's not involved. But we'll see. If Sarr's not available, then maybe it can be used as a discussion point. If not, it'll be one for the pre-Brentford game, pre-Brentford press conference. But still, it would be interesting to know where he goes with that. Whether he admits, yeah, in hindsight, of course, or whether he just kind of comes out and admits that I just don't kind of see him as a starting player. I don't know. But it was one decision for me. I kind of knew it was probably coming, but I just didn't get it. Mikey Moore not starting, I kind of understood that, despite the fact that Mikey is obviously an incredibly talented young player. I can understand being a little bit wary of, from the start, him not being able to maybe defend, track back, things like that. And we saw against Palace in his start before in the Premier League that, physically, maybe it might have been a little bit tough for him. He is still developing, he's still growing, he's getting stronger and stronger, and that will come. So I kind of got that. But with Reguilon, it just didn't really make much sense to me when you've got players that must be, in the kind of the red zone or whatever it's called of kind of picking up injuries and the amount of minutes they're playing. Obviously Porro is one that has played the most minutes out of anyone. Radu Dragic, we were discussing this. George Sessions was talking about it from Press Association, that Radu Dragic has played every game since he came in against Man City. Almost every minute, barring the one he had to come off for when he turned his ankle, and Tamworth, he came off before extra time. That's it. Archie Gray has played a lot of minutes, but was a bit further down the line than that. Because it was only when Ben Davies got injured, wasn't it, that Archie Gray then had to come in as well. So yeah, you've got all these players. I'd be fascinated to know who the other player is that shouldn't have played. Again, it might be something that we get out of him on Wednesday. Yeah, we'll see. You see, I'm constantly looking across just for anything new to happen, preferably transfer related, because it's just looking at my messages. I've got it all laid out on a screen. Messages, social media, everything going on there. It's crazy. It's not crazy. It's just normal. But yeah. So there you go. And Richarlison. Richarlison again had like a moment that showed like, this is what he brings to the team. Brilliant improvised header, reaching a ball that was kind of coming behind him. I don't know why I'm looking like I'm slowly dancing in a weird, creepy manner. I was trying to mimic what he was doing with his head. Great Porro cross, and Richarlison makes a great kind of effort to get to the ball, and was that 2 in 2 games for him? Yet, I mean, it actually was a really brave header because he smashed into the post as well, and I was thinking, oh no! But he got up, did the baby celebration thing, put the ball under his top and all that sort of stuff. But then, was it 55 minutes, 10 minutes into the second half, his number goes up. We were kind of all expecting it, to be honest, anyway, because of minutes. Having played so few minutes, not being fit enough, having played 55 minutes in midweek, and then, it's pretty much just over 48 hours later because they landed at 2 a.m. Leicester had 8 days of recovery. And so we kind of thought, okay, Richarlison's not going to be pushed beyond that. And then obviously the crowd booed because they didn't want the striker being taken off, or especially the one who scored a goal. I get that, but maybe not realising in that moment that, he probably had to come off. But actually, he really had to come off because there was another underlying thing to it, that he was feeling discomfort in his groin. He came in at half-time saying about it, but wanted to play another 10 minutes or so. And Postecoglou, I've got his quote here, actually. It's easier him saying it than me. He was feeling his groin. He should have come off at half-time, but he wanted to give another 10 minutes. I could see he wasn't running well, so that is why I took him off. Please don't be another injury for Richarlison. If it is, it's just ridiculous. To get him back, to get 2 goals in 2 games and thinking, okay, the Solanke absence is kind of being catered for in terms of you've 2 goals in 2 Premier League games, isn't it? It's not, yeah, of course it was. It's against Everton. But yeah, and then he maybe picks up an injury. Hopefully it's precautionary and they just wanted to get him off there. It's just a little bit worried. I feel like he's had groin injuries before. Obviously there's been hamstring ones. There was a calf one as well. But you just hope it's nothing. But, does that put him in doubt for Thursday night? Are you going to have to probably play Sonny through the middle again and use him over and over and over again and leave him tired? But it's just such a ridiculous situation. It's crazy that, the only fit and viable players for Postecoglou to try and bring on to save a game were a 17-year-old boy. It's not being patronising. He's not 18 yet, Mikey Moore. And like I say, a player who has not been wanted at the club for 2.5 years in Sergio Reguilón. He's been on loan. He's been everywhere else. He's been at Atletico Madrid, Man United, Brentford. It wasn't meant to be here this season. He's not registered in the Europa League squad because he was never going to be. The Premier League squad, they probably just thought, nah, whatever. And they've actually had to use him now in games. It should not have got to that situation. And then you've got Heung-min. Heung-min, who's clearly not seen as an option for now. It looks like there's no even intent to get him near that pitch right now. And that speaks volumes again about the transfer policy of bringing in players for the future, not the now. There's a decent chance he could end up getting loaned out this January transfer window just to get him some development opportunity. If they can find, A, if they can get attackers in, and B, if they can choose a place where he's going to get game time and he's going to develop well enough. Whether that is lower down the English leagues and the physical nature of it, I don't know, or whether it would be somewhere like, I don't know, Belgium, Netherlands, something like that, just to get him some kind of experience of European football, I suppose, which is going to be different to what he's been used to in the K-League. But yeah, it's like, I hope there's no indication that, he's a January signing. No, No. He was a summer signing that arrived in January and clearly is not ready for Spurs this season. And look, to another degree, Will Lancashire he just needs a loan to develop. It's not quite there yet for a prolonged exposure to this level of football. He obviously scored that goal against Galatasaray, which was terrific. Then obviously got himself sent off. But I think you could just see at the moment he's not quite there yet. I'd really loathe to kind of judge teenagers in terms of how they kind of show in moments when the team are not playing well. That's a really difficult time to judge a player. But unfortunately, as a striker, you kind of got to come on and make an impact. And it's just so difficult for him right now. And I feel like he would be better served by getting a loan, but he's not going to be able to get that loan unless someone comes through those doors at Tottenham Hotspur. It's going to need that, really. So, yeah. And I mean, kind of staying on the youth theme, there's been these calls for Postecoglou to throw in the young players, to use them instead of the senior players. They're not ready for that. They're not. I mean, Mikey Moore obviously is an exception to the rule because he's just an incredible young talent. But even he is, as I've just said, has got a long way to go. There's so much more for him to do. Remarkable talent, but physically he's got to continue to grow and get experience at this level just with minutes here and there. And you would think he'll start on Thursday night. But kind of you look beyond him and there's a lot of players there that are not on Premier League level in the under-21s, and then maybe they will reach it, but many won't. That's academy football. That's how it works. If academy is produced, there, however, 15, 20 players in the under-21 squad were all Premier League players, you wouldn't need transfers. It would be amazing, but that's not how academy works. Academies work to, if you can get one or two out of each year group essentially could make it through and get a Premier League appearance even, that's a success. It's just, I think there's this kind of idea that throw them in. How bad can it be? Unfortunately, it can be pretty bad. And I know Spurs are struggling right now, but if you throw in young players who, I mean, look at the under-21s this season, they're having a tough year. They had those players taken out of it, that was so good for them last year, like Jamie Donnelly, George Abbott, who's the captain, and Iago Santiago as well. Obviously, he's gone elsewhere. Judson Bell, and all these goals that have kind of been taken out of that team as well. And they're struggling. They're 21st in Premier League 2, the under-21s league right now. They've only won 4 of their 13 matches. Got a couple of wins recently, which is great. But you don't throw players from that situation into the Premier League. It's huge. You can absolutely stunt their development, any development they might have completely. And suddenly these games where Spurs are losing narrowly by a goal, then there's is it still only a Liverpool game that they've only lost by more than one goal? God, that's mad in itself with some of the defending that's gone on. But you're then kind of losing these games heavily and things like that. It's and I know there's the idea of, you won't know till you try, but you can see, and the coaching staff will see them in training sessions. They'll know whether they're ready or not. And even Callum Olasese, he's been working so hard and he finally got his first minutes the other day at Hoffenheim. But yet they don't clearly think he's at the level yet where they kind of felt that they could throw him in that game against Leicester. But he hopefully will get. He's a very talented young lad. Callum is probably one of those that you would put in that group that has the potential to be a Premier League player. But it's, as Postecoglou said on Friday, it's a long way to go from that to actually being a Premier League player. Having the potential is your starting point. Realising it is a whole different thing. There's so many forks in the road that you've got to go down. But yeah, ultimately, it's all a bit of a misnomer, the academy stuff, because Postecoglou has needed senior help. That's what he's needed, and he hasn't got it. That's been the most frustrating thing about it all. And and I know he gets flack for the injuries and stuff like that. And yeah, and it kind of just, I don't know, people listening, if anyone's listened to the podcast earlier, you might have heard me having my bugbear about this, and a few journalists were hearing me say this as well. It's the Bournemouth comparison. And I get it, because Iriola's doing a terrific job, and they've got a lot of injuries. Absolutely get that he should be praised for that, and that they're doing well. But I think I said the first part of this in a previous video, that they haven't lost as many key players as Spurs have, and they don't have midweek fixtures. Someone made a really good point on social media. Shows social media isn't always an utter cesspit. There was a really good point someone made that, isn't it funny that at Spurs, all of the managers with kind of less European football to deal with did fine. And then in their second season, I think it mainly applies to Conte, to be honest, but in their second season, when they needed a stronger squad to deal with more fixtures, they struggled. And that is clearly on the club, really. I'm trying to think of Jose. Jose had Champions League football, but it went reasonably quickly. Yeah, maybe that's the way to look at it. Perhaps the second half of their seasons, they didn't have so much midweek European football to deal with, and they found it easier. Yet Spurs can't deal with lots of fixtures, and this is another manager that's found that, so maybe it's not the managers. But anyway, back to the Bournemouth point. So what was I saying about them? Not lost as many key players as Spurs, no midweek fixtures, which means those players are getting a full week off to recover and go again each weekend. But also what I find is probably the thing that's recently struck me is that Ange Postecoglou is getting all of this flack for the injuries at Spurs, because it's his style of football, his intense running football that is causing all of these injuries. Why is Iriola's high energy running football, why is he not getting any flack for all of the injuries they've got? It's almost like, poor Bournemouth, unlucky Bournemouth, look at them, they're doing so well. Congratulations. Whereas with Spurs, it's like, you cause it yourself, deal with it. It's really weird. Well, it's not weird. I know what it is. It's winning. Winning does that. If you win, it papers over kind of issues that are there. And we've seen this before with high-running, high-energy systems like Klopp's and Pochettino's as well at Spurs. In the first year, you get a fair few injuries. The trouble for Postecoglou is that they have tumbled into the second season as well. And that could be down to, issues within the medical side of things in terms of re-injuries and things not being, just not working in the way that they're meant to. I don't know. It could be a range of factors. But yeah, it's just funny that he's getting in the neck for that, and it's because they're losing. It's if you don't win, essentially everything is scrutinised in far greater clarity, as it should be, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I just find it interesting that the kind of narrative is shaped by the victors, and I guess that's how history works as well. But yeah, there are, like I said, I'm not excusing Postecoglou at all, because there are definitely aspects right now that he knows have to be a lot better. Defending is one of them. This is the thing. They're third top goal scorers in the Premier League still. They're scoring goals. Could have done with more yesterday. But defending is just these moments where it's amateurish. And that has to be sorted big time. I know it's a makeshift defence, but they've been playing together long enough. And I know they're tired. But they're just these moments that, to come straight out after half time is when you should be a little bit fresher, a little bit recharged, and they switched off. Porro for the first goal, as is often the case, whether deliberately or because he just has messed up something, he was out of position. Radu Dragusin really slow to come across and cover the gap. That left Bobby De Cordova-Reid get down there, hit this low cross. Again, complete flappy mess in the middle of the penalty area. Ben Davies sliding in, completely missing the ball. Antonin Kinski missing the ball, whether that's because he was put off by Davies, I don't know. But two people kind of coming across like that and not being able to get the ball, and yet somehow knocking it against Jamie Vardy, who was probably like, yes, another Spurs goal. I think that's 10, maybe someone told me, 10 goals against Spurs, which is mad. He is 38. Like, I looked before the game, I was writing some stuff, and I think he's 38 now. Oh, surely he hasn't got the pace anymore. And there was this moment he ran down the right. I was like, oh, he's still got the pace. How annoying. And you just knew, especially when the crowd start chanting Vardy chants, you just know he's going to score. It is the ultimate jinxing of a match. Look, it's Spurs' fault. I'm not blaming the crowd, but you just know it's going to happen. So that was a ridiculous goal. The second goal was ridiculous again. Porro, another mistake. This time, he just plays an awful pass to Bentancur. It puts him in all kinds of trouble. Ball gets cut out. It's worked to Bilal El Kanous, and did that Spurs defence did that thing that frustrates me so much. It's almost like playing percentages. It's like backing away, and allowing a player to take a shot from the edge of the box. They score against Spurs when they do that. It's like, learn the lesson. It's not playing the percentages when it's Tottenham. And he hit a shot that was decent enough, but I think probably Kinski was, I'm guessing, unsighted because of the players in front of him who were not going forward, and he got angry after that. He was properly letting them know how disappointed he was. This is the one thing with Kinski. He's done really well, overall, coming into a completely different league, completely different country, only 21 years old. Yet maybe with Vicario coming back, you miss the vocal leadership that he brings. He is probably, for me, Vicario, the most vocal leader at the club. So to have him organising and shouting and telling people what to do, that will at least be one thing when he comes back. And be interesting to see when he comes back. Obviously, it was end of Feb, they were saying originally, wasn't it? Or Postecoglou maybe said. But certainly the amount of footage he is pumping out on social media of himself on the training pitches, running around, jumping, diving around and everything, maybe suggests it might be quicker. We'll see. But yeah, incredibly disappointing goals. They're both two goals we've seen so many times from Spurs this season. Something created on Porro's side, whether it is a ball from the flank or whether it is someone finishing in between the right back and the centre back position. And the second one, backing off and letting the player have a shot from the edge of the box. Yeah, we've just seen it so many times. It's ridiculous. But then again, at the other end, Spurs had enough chances to win the game. Son, Porro, Kulusevski, they all forced the keeper into decent saves. Son and Porro both hit the crossbar with shots that were kind of deflected onto it. One from the keeper, one from a defender. I think actually it might have been Jamie Vardy's head from a Porro free kick that sent it onto the crossbar. It just couldn't get the ball over the line again, other than a Richarlison one. And it was essentially 5 minutes that destroyed a game and created an entirely different atmosphere around the club, really. So it was a game they just had to win. They just had to get through it, and they should have won. There's a team second from bottom that won 7 in a row. Their manager was, the subject of plenty of speculation and debate and headlines, yet no, Spurs just couldn't do the job. And ultimately, even if it was only 5 minutes out of the 95 plus they played, doesn't matter. That's it. I think the possession was something like 39% possession Leicester had, 61 to Spurs. Doesn't matter because it's about that scoreline. And that's been just a frustrating thing about this season too many times. Too many games where Spurs could have scored more, could have concentrated better at the back. And ultimately, if Postecoglou does end up losing his job at any point over the coming weeks, it will be because of those moments, key moments. It's maddening. It's so frustrating. He said after the game, I think for the most part, we controlled the game pretty well. We certainly created enough opportunities to win the game. We had that 5-minute spell after half-time where we were punished. But either side of that, there was enough there for us to win the game. Players are giving everything. From my perspective, I can't get away from the fact that this group of players are trying as hard as they possibly can to turn our fortunes around. And this is it. He can't be angry with the players. He can't. Because he needs them. He needs them to just keep putting themselves out there every 3 days or so. They must be mentally and physically drained. Like I said, they got back from Germany, I think it was 2-3 o'clock in the morning on Friday morning. They would have just pretty much come in and probably slept maybe had an afternoon training session, very, very light recovery thing. Saturday would have been just a walkthrough, and then Sunday they're straight back into a high-paced Premier League match again. Yeah, it's just mad. It's just mad. And even the Europa League game, the way it went was far more grueling than they would have wanted it to be, because, again, needed another goal in that first half, really, to see it off among the chances they had. The best example you can find of a player that has just been ruined by the overplaying is Kulusevski. Kulusevski, we were talking about being one of the best players in the Premier League and most informed players earlier this season. He was unplayable. And now he's like a shadow of his former self because he is so tired. There's so many times when he kind of is put through down the right now. And there was the one that there was the... it was saved. I think it was Kinski actually played a really nice ball over the top and he ran onto it. And you could just see he was out on his feet trying to get through. I know he's not the fastest player in the world, but he has that strength. He has that ability to hold people off. He doesn't even look like he's got the strength at times now. He needs almost like a week on a beach somewhere. Honestly, if Spurs can get to this point where they're going to have finally a week off in it's a couple of weeks' time, isn't it? They should just send all the players on holiday. Just don't even bother with training sessions. Just send them to a spa in a foreign country, in the warm, because they've earned it and they just need it. It's just incredible. Or just lock them up in some kind of cryogenic chamber that just is it a hyperbaric chamber? I can't remember the word for it now. Not cryogenic. That would be like Demolition Man, the old Stallone film. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good at all. And he was asked about, the way things are right now at the club, the look of the Premier League table, and everything really. And Postecoglou said, "I've been around long enough to know that some people will just judge on where we are at the moment, and rightly so in some respects. It's not good enough. If people want to put context to that, they can. If not, so be it. From my point of view, I'm still very much stuck on the fact that the players are just giving everything they can. They did on Thursday night, they did today. There are probably at least two who shouldn't have been out there. They were just desperate to try to turn our fortunes around. Hopefully over the next 10 days or 2 weeks, we should get some significant players back, which I think will help this group a lot. It will give the boost they need. We've still got some fantastic opportunities this year to make an impact in the second half of this year, and I'm sure that will happen." He always says this year rather than the season. It's really weird. It's not really weird, but you know what I mean. It doesn't really make much sense because the second half of this year is next season. Yeah, I was trying to think. I just remembered while everything really during the game, the anger and everything was aimed towards Levy with the chants and the banners and everything. There was a little flashpoint moment in the tunnel as Postecoglou was walking down. Someone seemed to say something to him. There was sort of suggestion it was something along the lines of, "You're going down and you're taking us with you," something like that. And he came back out and kind of glared at whoever it was. It may be that it wasn't that. It may be that someone said something a bit more abusive. I don't know. But he's just got this habit right now. And, he's a guy, he's a 59-year-old man that has been in the game for, 26 years as a coach and longer as a player. He must know by now, don't react. Just don't react, because it is seized upon. And other fans see that, and they see him as fighting with fans. I know he's not fighting, but you know what I mean? That's the idea it gives. And it just, to come back out, and kind of the coaches just like kind of shoved him down the tunnel. And you just kind of think, you shouldn't need to do that. It's just, that's frustrating. As is the kind of narrative he's kind of created in a way, with the snippy way he can be in his broadcast interviews, the TV and radio sometimes. And it kind of creates this narrative for people that aren't his press conferences. He's pretty much fine 99% of the time. He's absolutely fine. He's like, even after the game yesterday, he was quite insightful. It started off, you could see he was really down and about the result and kind of just the implications of it and everything. But actually, as he was talking, it was good. He was insightful. He was interesting. And that's kind of what you want. But when he does these TV and radio interviews, just sometimes he snaps. And those are the things that people see. They'll see it on Match of the Day. They'll hear it on their radio. It'll get played over and over and again. Whereas his press conference, the bulk of that's probably never going to be seen. It's going to be read maybe in the stuff that we do, but ultimately it's probably not going to, many people are actually going to view it compared to people watching Match of the Day and stuff like that. So, yeah, silly things like that I think he gets himself drawn into. Is it because of the pressure? Perhaps. I think he said before that, he is human and he can get emotional. He didn't have to say that. We know he's human. But, yeah, I just think that's the kind of thing that he just, with everything else going on right now, don't start more battles. You just don't need to. There's enough to deal with. But, yeah, it's just... he was asked whether... When he was talking about these players being back in 10 days to 2 weeks and having a fuller squad, is he going to be around for that? He was asked. And he said, who knows? I reckon there is probably a fair chunk that will say no. When you're the manager of a football club, you can be very vulnerable and isolated. I don't feel that. I feel like this group of players, not for me, but are giving everything for the club. I have a group of staff that is really committed. I focus on that. My role within that is to try and support these players. I can even see in training when the guys who are coming back come back in, it is going to give everyone a lift. As I keep saying to the players, there is a fantastic opportunity this season to really make an impact, and I know we can. But in terms of your question, is there anything I can say about that is going to change anything I need to do tomorrow morning? Nothing. And again, he once again called for help in the transfer window. We've heard these lines before. Even if it just feels like the damage has already been done to me. Still needs them, don't get me wrong, but there's so much damage has been done. It's 8 games I think they've played since the window opened, something like that. All of those missed opportunities to have fresh players in there and just allow other players to get a rest. He said, I've said all along, the players need help, and I've also said the club are working hard in that area to try to alleviate some of those problems because Papsar shouldn't have played today. He obviously wasn't fit. The players are going out there and giving everything they can because we can't call off games. We've got another game in 3 days' time that these players have to front up for. The injury situation will ease, and I'm confident they will sort of help us. I think he means the club there. Even one more player coming in, just in the short term, will give us an opportunity, at least to navigate these last 10 days, 2 weeks of what has been a really hard slog for this group of players. And look, if Levy were to kind of deflect attention again to another new manager, which would be his 14th in 24 years at the club, which is just mind-boggling, then any newcomer is just going to enter this same utterly absurd mess with a crazy environment with so many players out. Which high-level managers for the long term, yes, I know Spurs managers only normally last about 18 months, but which of them would leave their current projects in mid-season to come into that happening right now? It's like constant chaos, really, of it all. I looked through like the out-of-work candidates that there are as well, just in case, anything happened. And so many of them, there's loads that kind of failed at their last clubs. There's a lot of risks in there. There's a number of ones that would kind of flip-flop back to the football that the fans don't like. Terzic, former Dortmund one, is the one that's kind of probably mostly chucked out there in the news. And again, he's a risk as well. He's only really been in the Dortmund bubble as a coach. Kind of looked up stuff about him. There's like real differing opinions on his tactics. Some say that he tries to play nice football. Other people say that was one of the issues at Dortmund, that the players maybe felt like the tactics became too pragmatic at times, and they weren't going for things against teams that they really should be going at. There's a real kind of mixed opinion. Google him. Don't take my word for it. Kind of look him up, and there's a very mixed view. Dortmund fans, kind of, despite some of the things he did, he was runner-up one year, got to the Champions League final. Yet there's still a kind of a real, I don't know, when he kind of steps aside at the end of the season, I don't know if there was a great outpouring of, oh no. But yeah, there's candidates like that out there, but the likes of others that have kind of in the Premier League, like Iriola, Thomas Frank's another one that's been mentioned, although again, I think the football would probably not always be what Spurs fans would want. Kieran McKenna at Ipswich. why would any of those kind of jump ship from what they're trying to do, the project they're in right now, mid-season? And I think that's part of the issue as well at Spurs right now, is that, what do you do? What if Levy did decide he was going to do the old 18-month trick? You couldn't give it to Ryan Mason again. This is no slight on Ryan Mason, but as a club, it would be embarrassing for a third time to have to give it to one of the kind of young coaches again. Keep saying, oh, Ryan, we never actually gave you the job. Want to do it again for a bit? It's like, it's just embarrassing. A bit like when I used to go back to David Pleat all the time as a caretaker manager. It was just the go-to move. And look, a managerial change this time is not going to provide the injection of hope that, stops supporters being disgruntled. If anything, supporters are just going to still be very focused on what they feel is Daniel Levy's role in things. So I don't think it serves the objective it previously had. I mean, you look at the previous ones, Pochettino going, despite all the credit he had in the bank over 5.5 years, very quickly leaving Spurs through the special one, Jose Mourinho people. It was like less than 12 hours later he was there. And people were like, oh, he does win stuff. And it kind of, it creates this like, okay, maybe. And then the same again, when the Fabio Paratici's Nuno experiment didn't work, Conte was suddenly there to make everyone feel a little bit better for a short while at least before that all went pear-shaped. Yes, it hasn't gone unnoticed, of course, that all those three managers I just mentioned are in the top three of their respective leagues right now, which kind of proves, funnily enough, when they left Spurs, they found it easier to get back to the success they were having before Spurs. There you go. So yeah, it's not going to deflect anything away right now. Like I say, I think everyone's well aware that there are bigger issues at Spurs, and that just maybe that is part of trying to give Postecoglou as long as possible. Maybe it is to kind of try to create something different at the club, try to create some stability, to try to take or come away from this short-termist view of it's not working, change, and just doing that constantly. Maybe that's what it's about. That's the idealistic side of me, hoping that that's the case. And, if Postecoglou can come through this, if he can get players back, get players in, that would be something, and he comes through it, then it would prove like, oh yeah, it worked. The one time we stuck with someone and it worked. I mean, you could argue the last time they did that, they stuck with Pochettino in his first year when it was going a little bit iffy, and we saw what happened next. He was asked about how regularly he speaks to Daniel Levy, Postecoglou. He said, I don't really speak regularly to him. He lets me get on with it. I mean, during this January period, there's always regular contact, but that's not what I'm talking about. It means when he was talking about managers being isolated. All I'm saying is I come into the club and I feel like everyone, all the players and staff, are in the belief of what we're trying to do. I don't feel like I'm trying to convince people in this moment about what we're doing and where we're heading. That's where I get the solace to say, okay, I still believe we can. I still think there's an opportunity here. I really believe in this group of players. Even today, what I asked of them, some of the performances were outstanding considering what they've been through. To me, that's all positive. But ultimately, the fact that we've lost another game of football, the focus is on that. I've felt all along, and he's not saying it shouldn't be, he's saying it is. I've felt all along that the players are still very committed to what we're doing. That's important to me because I firmly believe in it. And I really believe that this is as low as we've been so far this year. But I still think that in these last 3 months, we can do something really special. And these players believe that. Right now, it's very hard to visualise that with the current circumstances we're in. You just have to look at our absences today. They'll all be back. Even missing Madders today. He was so good the other night. All these little things that are not allowing us to get any momentum, I'm sure will change. And when they change, I'm really confident we can make an impact. And that's a big thing, I think, that he has got the players behind him still, because that hasn't been the case with previous managers. And it has made it easier for Levy and the club, the powers that be, the board, the hierarchy, whatever we want to label them as, the owners, to make a change. Whereas in this case, it feels like the players are still behind him and they see the circumstances. They see the fact they're not able to get rest because there's nobody else. And they're not blaming Postecoglou for that. And like he said, that is the mad thing about this season, is Spurs could start getting momentum again if they get everyone back. But they've got to get people back. They've got to not lose people in the same instance. Because, yeah, the cups are there. They are. It would be a very weird season. In previous years, we've been kind of used to Having seasons where they've done okay in the league and then you've just been disappointed, still no silverware. Whereas this could be a season where they don't do well in the league, yet maybe get some silverware. Guesty was joking today, not in a mean way, but just saying it would be classic Spurs to get to a couple of finals, but yet not actually win the finals. And so it just ends up being a bad season because they didn't do either. But yeah, look, certainly for now, Spurs seem to be giving Postecoglou this rare, prolonged chance to find momentum and make an impact. But he needs things to change quickly around him. And that is players coming back, that is players coming in, and maybe just some fortune going his way as well. Because if he doesn't get it, history has shown us what happens next at Spurs. And we'll all be starting again. And I will be so tired and so bored of it until I can somehow find some hope once again. But hopefully, the hope will be in that Postecoglou can turn things around. And I know that's not a view everyone shares, and with every defeat, the group of people that don't want Postecoglou there will grow. And I get it, because they're defeats at the end of the day. Whether you want to see the context or whether the context is something that people attribute to Postecoglou as well. There are muscle injuries that have come through his football, but I think a lot of the injuries we're seeing right now are just because of the overplaying that's is having to happen because of the lack of help and anything that the squad has been getting in this month. But there you go. In terms of what do Spurs need from this last week, just quickly, just purely my opinion, I think we're probably past the point of no return with centre-backs, or point of return with centre-backs, that, Romero and Van der Ven back in training, Davies is there, Dragishin's there, you've got 4 centre-backs now. Probably the moment when they really needed a short-term option at centre-back has probably passed. I personally, if you're going to ask me what defender would I like to bring in, I would say a left-back now, because, they have no fit natural left-back, if we're saying that Ben Davies is not one anymore. They went into this season with one fit natural left-back, which was wrong. Last season, a midfielder and Skippy ended up playing as the left-back for the end of the season. This season, a midfielder has been playing as a left-back in Archie Gray. It has been poorly dealt with. It's an area of the team that needed fixing, and it has not been fixed. If they could get someone in at left-back, even short-term for now, until they sort it out probably in the summer, it needs to happen, because that then frees up Spence, who should hopefully be back for the Brentford game, to be able to be on the right and give Porro breathing time. And Gray also doesn't have to always be the left-back backup. Midfield could do with bolstering. It's one of those where there's probably slightly more bodies when you get a few of them back, but still, at the moment, right now, you've got Basuma couldn't come off the bench and play. Maddison obviously couldn't play. Sarr was struggling. So that's 3 out of there, and that's not really leaving a lot of midfielders left. So I'm sure Postecoglou wouldn't say no if one was offered. But let's be honest, the main kind of area probably right now is in attack. There's very real chance on Thursday they could only have 3 fit people to fit in the front 3. Oh, that was an awkward sentence. You might only have Mikey Moore, Sonny and Kulusevski to play. That is obscene. It is ridiculous. And who comes in? They've got to find people, whether it is going for someone like Jonathan David. I know Postecoglou kind of said not just a natural centre forward, although Jonathan David does play as a winger. Someone we know they've had interested in the past. Do they revisit that? And Lille maybe need money because he's going to go on a free in the summer. Maybe that is one thing they look at. Do they even enter the Rashford arena? Marcus Rashford, clearly United want rid of him. And he's on a lot of wages. Do Spurs enter that arena as United become more desperate and it becomes a better deal? Should that be the reason that they enter? No, absolutely not. If they wanted to go for Rashford, it should have been something they went for early on, not wait for when it was the best bargain possible. Absolutely. But could that happen? Who knows? We'll see. I would imagine with Johan Langer, there's going to be ones that suddenly come out of the woodwork at the last minute and we'll hear about. But ultimately, they just need to bring people in. They do. It's just madness. You kind of look at some of the loan players are out there now and you can see what they could have done if they'd stuck around. But I understand why they went out in the first place. Manor Solomon, obviously, doing really well for Leeds, would have played minutes right now. Ashley Phillips probably would have been involved as well. Jamie Donnelly's doing superbly at Leyton Orient. Josh Keeley is as well, but obviously the goalkeeper department is fully stocked. Alfie Devine, had he actually stuck around rather than going to Westerlo, they've lost 4 in a row. They're a bit of a tough time at the moment, him and Vuskovic and the team. But, Alfie Devine probably would have got a fair bit of minutes. But again, it's all hindsight. Of course it is. But yeah. Spurs, decision-making, all of the above. But yeah, right, I need to go away. I need to just not think about Spurs for a bit. I can't because it's my job, although I do have a day off tomorrow. Hopefully that means something, hopefully it means something good. I don't want to have to be drawn on to work because it meant something bad. But yeah, that would be nice. Even if the world of football fate made something happen, that would be great in a good way. But I'm going to try and think of as little as Spurs as possible tomorrow, just to kind of recharge myself. I feel like I've played in every game. I feel like I'm aging. I feel like I look about 10 years older than I did before this season started. And I'm sure you all feel exactly the same way with Tottenham Hotspur. What a club. They really are. But there you go. Right. Very long, hour-long rant over. Sorry about that. It is what it is. It's Tottenham Hotspur right now, unfortunately. Time to head off. Next one of these, probably try and do one on Friday if nothing major happens in the meantime. And yeah, the game against Elfsborg now, which on paper should be a winnable game, but Spurs aren't doing anything that paper suggests right now. And like I said, who knows what players he's got to put out. Could be a situation where, maybe a youth player has to play. Maybe someone like Callum says he has to come in. Who knows? It depends kind of who's fit and available. There could be more injuries before then. Does he give Romero some minutes? Van der Ven maybe some minutes, just to get them ready in case he needs them for Brentford and Liverpool. Who knows? Who knows? I've given up kind of trying to predict what's going to happen with Spurs right now because there's always some disaster looming or lurking around the corner waiting to pounce. Time to go. I need to stop talking about Tottenham. You're probably feeling exactly the same. So, as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.